We call these colibri talks because they are inspired by hummingbirds who are elegant and beautiful and also serve important roles in the ecosystem, pollinating important foods and crops. These talks are organized to connect, share, and inspire and spread these hummingbirds' effects wider for the sake of revitalizing our human and non-human ecosystems. Although these projects are different in some ways, they are part of a larger distributed global movement. Each of these actions is significant, with impacts and effects far beyond. So during this session, we're going to hear from 3 vibrant communities from different parts of the world, specifically Abya Yala in Transition. We'll see a beautiful video from them. The UK, we will hear a pre-recorded talk from Rona Hardie, who's part of Transition Together. And with us here, Virginia, or Vir, is how she is more often called, who will be sharing about her work in Argentina. So we're delighted for this opportunity. And I will start with a video from Abya Yala in Transition.
Hoy nos convocan los derechos de la madre tierra naturaleza en América Latina, sabiendo que el concepto de Abya Yala va más allá del continente latinoamericano, que es aquello que va desde Alaska hasta la Patagonia.
Porque nos sentimos parte de ella. Y a ese espíritu de la tierra quiero saludar esta mañana desde estas montañas de Tepoztlán, para que nos vaya guiando en esta plática, en este encuentro, en este tejido, a todos estos seres visibles e invisibles que nos convocan en este tiempo, en esta era. Traemos las raíces para este movimiento de todo lo que ha ido emergiendo en América Latina desde hace 30 años, desde hace 40 años, tanto en comunidades, asentamientos sustentables, ecoaldeas, como en todos los proyectos de los territorios donde se fue levantando la voz de alerta por lo que se avecinaba si seguíamos con estos patrones de conducta devastadores y en este sistema extractivista que nos está llevando a una destrucción masiva. En este viaje de recorrido con la caravana Arcoíris por la Paz desde los años 97 por toda la América Latina, que nos permitió conocer a varios de ustedes en los territorios, que nos permitió ir enlazando proyectos, ir dejando semillas, ir encaminando acciones dedicadas a este cuidado de la madre tierra. Al regreso de este viaje, de este peregrinaje, hemos traído del sur el mensaje de los derechos de la Pachamama que surgió en Ecuador en la propuesta constituyente en el año 2008, con la participación de los movimientos sociales, también de las luchas de los movimientos de pueblos originarios, movimientos indígenas, y ante el llamado del ese entonces presidente Rafael Correa surge esta propuesta de nueva constitución e incorpora los derechos de la Pachamama, derechos de la naturaleza en la constitución ecuatoriana, siendo Ecuador el primer país en el mundo en hacerlo y marcando un hito y una vanguardia para todos, de un camino que abre paso para los que venimos.
Uma alegria estar aqui com vocês, compartilhando pouco da visão do meu povo Iapamaçã, conhecido como povo tucano. Para nós, existe desde uma história antiga de cosmovisão a criação de diversos mundos, o mundo inferior, o mundo do meio e o mundo superior. E foi dentro de um processo de pensamento e de muita reflexão em que esses mundos foram sendo construídos pouco a pouco por Marconha e Epadura. Essa construção demorou milhares de anos e através desses grande pai do universo, grande avô e grande avó, que nós recebemos, né, nossas medicinas, nossos instrumentos, todo um conhecimento, né, conectado com a natureza, hoje conhecida como natureza, né, pela maioria do mundo. E não é possível se sustentar. Hoje, cada vez mais, já sabemos, sentimos as mudanças climáticas no nosso corpo, já ultrapassamos o ponto de não retorno. E tudo isso nos faz refletirmos juntos, enquanto comunidade planetária, do que podemos fazer para seguir um outro caminho. Bem, como indígena e advogada, tenho participado dessas conversas de conscientização, mas percebo que a racionalidade tão intrínseca a essa modernidade tem cegado e tem criado essa desconexão entre o pensar, o sentir e o agir. E acredito que o movimento que precisa acontecer, além de trazer esses diálogos, né, essas consciências que vão sendo trazidas através de diversos povos, é que a gente possa reaprender a se comunicar com os demais seres, é reaprender a escutar, a sentir, a realmente perceber e respeitar todo o fluxo de vida que tem nos colocado em xeque nesse momento. A Mapas tem se dedicado a fazer uma militância muito forte na linha das leis, dos julgamentos, de escolas, formando uma escola do bem viver, dentre outras ações que possam envolver a comunidade a entender o quão sensível e o quão integrado nós precisamos ser junto com a natureza.
And yeah, we'll open it up for a round of noticings, reflections, or anything that wants to come out at this point before shifting. So anybody's welcome to share.
Something, I'm just connecting the dots between what's been explained there and what happened then in Chile in relation to the constitution and the new constitution, and that was rejected by the population later, right? So it connects me with a really big question I have. That is how we can translate what we need for the future in the constitutions and the rights we have now. And the huge challenge that means for the entire population to have a consensus of what we need and what's our priority as humankind, or as countries, or in neighbors, as neighbors.
Yeah, I can share to that. And yeah, nice to see you, Kit, connecting from the other side of this mother. And I live in a very rural area in Chile, in the south of Chile. I live in Mapuche land. Nevertheless, it has been very much colonized by evangelic religion and by capitalism also. So I have experienced, like in first scene, how the power of the social media and the different ways of manipulation has changed the first petition of the change of the constitution to the second election, and they transformed the mind of many beings just with Facebook and a few channels on television. And in terms of this webinar that is about social justice, I can see how important is to bring higher the education of many of the countries of Latin America and the world, for people to be more sovereign in their personal opinions and in their perspectives. I live in a place where many people don't know how to write or read. So whatever they see is a video in Facebook or a television, someone speaking. They don't read more than that. They don't have received history or have the privilege of a personal development path or whatever like that, or traveling around the world and seeing other realities. So in terms of social justice and what you share, Virginia, it feels super important to be able to like work on education from the basis. So yeah, this is what I can share on that. Not only the Mother Earth rights, also human rights.
Yeah. Thank you. Kit, is there anything you'd like to add in? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I'd like to share a little bit from the Australian perspective too. You might be aware that last year was a very big event here in terms of a referendum that was held as a result of an invitation from the Indigenous people here for the widespread community to join with them in understanding their perspective and in addressing colonisation. It was a big year of education for a lot of people on the right side wanting to support that. But the referendum failed very badly, which has been a big disappointment. There was a lot of false news spread about what the referendum would mean, what the being included in the Constitution would mean. But there wasn't a lot of talk about the environmental aspect. Of course, like anywhere, the lands of the Indigenous people are being devastated by mining and deforestation. And yeah, there's a lot of political activism happening here around all of that. And yeah, it's good to be here, just shifting my gaze a little bit in that direction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kit. Yeah, and the one piece that jumped out to me was the interconnectedness, feeling climate change in the body, feeling the impacts that we're having on Mother Earth in our bodies. So I guess in that theme, we're going to shift to Rona, who is part of Transition Together in the UK. And I'll read a little bit about Rona's background, and we'll try again with the screen share. She couldn't be here with us tonight, but she offered to pre-record a talk. So let me just introduce her first. So Rona focuses on exploring ways to expand and celebrate just transition principles and practices in the Transition Together team and wider network, seeking to embed just transition into all areas of our work and open up conversations with transitioners around how we can best create a movement which centers justice and equity. She has a background as a climate justice organizer, trainer, and activist, and currently works part-time at Tipping Point, UK, alongside her role in Transition Together. Rona has recently moved to Bristol from Scotland and is enjoying getting to know a new city and exploring the Southwest. She loves hiking, foraging, camping, and is happiest running down a mountain or floating in a body of water. That's a little bit about Rona. And
okay, so I'm going to talk briefly about kind of how we're defining a just transition, because I think it has a lot of different meanings for different people, and I imagine that's kind of amplified because we're talking on a kind of international scale. So kind of getting us on the same page with shared definitions and explaining how we're defining just transition in a kind of UK context. And then I'm going to chat a little bit around kind of what we're seeing as our role in a broader movement for just transition, and how transition groups in the UK kind of fit in that framework and contribute towards kind of moving us towards just transition. And then I've got a little recording from my colleague Yaz, who's going to chat a little bit around inner transition and the work that we're doing around internal anti-oppression processes, to kind of work on our internal at the same time as that kind of external angle. And I think that is going to take us up to around 20 minutes. So that should be enough for me for today. Hopefully that is okay with all of you. Okay, so as I said, I'll start with a little bit of context, because I think the phrase just transition has lots of different meanings. The phrase originally comes from the US labour and environmental justice movements, and it came out of the kind of uniting of interests of trade unions and campaigners focused on environmental injustice. But it has also been kind of widely and increasingly used here in the UK, and especially in Scotland, where there's actually a Just Transition Commission at government level, as well as established grassroots campaigns looking at just transition. And this is actually where I personally first came across the phrase just transition. I was living in Aberdeen, which is a city in the northeast of Scotland, which has historically been really reliant on the fossil fuel industry for kind of jobs and propping up the city. And there it's used to refer mostly to moving away from oil and gas without sacrificing the economic, the social and the cultural securities, the security of communities which rely on the oil and gas industry. And I really, really strongly believe that we can't separate calls for a just transition from workers' rights and from the really important work that trade unions are doing in that area. But I also feel really strongly that just transition and the movement for a just transition shouldn't only be about workers and extractive industries. And I think there's actually a lot of power in it being a call for transition in all industries, and for all workforces, and also for the transformation of our entire kind of economic, political and social systems. So this phrase that I've got at the bottom, I think, is often used to sum up the phrase just transition and to explain its importance. You might have come across it before, kind of the phrase transition is inevitable, but justice is not. And it refers to the fact that kind of the climate, ecological and environmental crises mean that some kind of transition is going to happen, but that there's no guarantee that it will lead to a more socially just world than the one that we have now. And in the UK and around the world, I think, unfortunately, a lot of the solutions which are often proposed for reducing carbon emissions and for environmental issues, they have consequences which lead to more injustice, more exclusion and more inequality at both national and international levels. And I suppose on a personal level, my background is mostly from a kind of climate justice perspective, which is about the kind of uniting of climate and environmental issues with social justice and equity. So just a little bit more on kind of definitions. This is a really wordy, but also really interesting and useful definition from the Climate Justice Alliance, who have been a big part in work around just transition in the US. And I find it useful in the UK context for kind of referring to what I mean when I say a just transition. They define just transition, as it says on the screen, as a vision-led, unifying and place-based set of principles, processes and practices that build economic and political power to shift from an extractive economy to a regenerative one. So kind of looking at it through a transition lens, I think this phrase vision-led is really interesting. To me, it means putting imagination at the heart, which is obviously a really core part of transition. Unifying means seeing it as an opportunity for cohesion and for bringing folks together rather than for kind of entrenching existing divisions. And place-based means situating this just transition in communities and at a local level and recognising the value in acting at the local level, which is also something that transition groups are already kind of really actively doing here in the UK and elsewhere. And using these three words, principles, processes and practices, means for me that Just Transition is both a set of values and an active and kind of live process that we can participate in and contribute to. And I'm going to expand a little bit more with this next slide on kind of the meaning behind shifting from an extractive economy to a regenerative one. This is also a graphic from the Climate Justice Alliance, and I realise it's probably quite small on your screen, so don't worry if you can't read all of it. It's just kind of, I find it quite useful as a kind of visual tool. This frames Just Transition as something which involves kind of stopping the harmful practices that are involved in an extractive economy, with simultaneously shifting to a regenerative economy by building alternatives. So on this left side, under the extractive economy, they've kind of got the worldview being consumerism and colonialism, the purpose being the enclosure of wealth and power, kind of extraction of resources being the pillar that props up the economy. And this is unfortunately how most of the world, including in the UK, is how our economies are functioning. We have kind of economic, political and social systems which are inherently exploitative both to the environment and to most communities. So a Just Transition would combine stopping this system and the harm that it creates with simultaneously building regenerative systems which prioritise both the rights of humans and the rights of the planet over profit and power. So on the right here, under regenerative economy, we have kind of care at the centre, the purpose being ecological and social well-being, and the resource use model being based on regeneration. So hopefully that's enough of a definition so that we can kind of be talking about the same thing, or you can kind of understand that what I'm saying when I say Just Transition. But what we're looking at specifically, I suppose, in my role in the UK and the work that we're doing here is around where transition groups fit into this model and fit into this kind of broader movement for a Just Transition. I think that there's loads of groups in the UK who are doing really important work around this kind of stopping the bad. So thinking about groups who are doing work against the horrific border policies which are coming into place in the UK, or campaigning against oil and gas expansion, that kind of all fits into this stopping the bad and stopping the harms. And I think there's actually those transition groups who are also really actively doing that. Groups like Transition Heathrow, who've been involved in campaigning against a third runway at Heathrow, which is the UK's biggest airport, or Rakesh, who's been a massive part of the transition movement in the UK, who's doing a project around decolonising permaculture and kind of gathering loads of research around that. So that's kind of, for me, both of those fall into this kind of like stopping the extractive economy and stopping the bad. And I'm hoping that it will be possible to share a recording from a talk a few months ago where both Rakesh and Rose and other groups talk about the work that they're doing in that area. But actually, I think where there's a particularly exciting opportunity is where transition groups have a real niche and are really kind of best placed is to fit into this building the new and using kind of imagination and ways of existing together that transition groups have been practicing for years to kind of build this regenerative economy alongside and at the same time as stopping the bad. And I think it's important to say that both of these are necessary in this framework and in the kind of way that I think about Just Transition. We need to do both the stopping of the extractive economy with the building of the regenerative economy in order to build a powerful and impactful movement for a Just Transition. But transition network, as a movement, is kind of really well placed and really excitingly placed to fit into this building of a regenerative economy. And in the UK, and I'm sure around the world, there are groups who are really actively doing this work. So I guess, yeah, I've spoken a lot about the role that the transition movement can play and is playing in these movements. There's a bit of an equation here, which is obviously a massive simplification. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that combining this kind of movement for a Just Transition with this kind of community-led change, which transition groups are already doing really well, those kind of two together, there's loads of power in terms of building us towards collective liberation as the ultimate goal, which is obviously a massive simplification. I really wish it was that easy, but I think that there's huge power in that kind of combination of seeing ourselves as a broader movement for justice and for a just transition with that kind of community-led change angle. I'm going to talk briefly around some of the work that we're doing, starting off with looking internally, and then I've got a recording from a colleague which I'm going to play as well. So in terms of what we're doing in Transition together, we started off looking at this work and felt quite quickly that we couldn't do it authentically externally without also looking internally. So I guess the lens for that being, or the explanation for that being, we felt like if we were going to be doing this work in a broader movement and with groups, we also needed to look at the way that we were operating as a smaller kind of staff team and in our own processes. So those kind of two needed to go hand in hand. So a few months ago, we started an internal anti-oppression process, which essentially means that we're working with a collective of external facilitators called HELD, and we're exploring how oppressive practices show up in our workplace, and alongside that, how to build anti-oppressive ways of working and ways of being into our culture. So I've got a recording which I'm hoping is going to play from my colleague Yaz, who is speaking. This was a few months ago, but I think it still is just as relevant now, about how this work is an important part of any kind of movement for a just transition.
So we might understand inner transition as being about creating healthy culture at all levels of scale. Our personal culture, our group culture, and the culture within communities, movements, the world, and ecosystems more generally. Alongside this, a key principle of just transition is equitable redistribution of power and resources, building new systems that are good for all people and not just a few. And this involves understanding and then transforming current and historic social inequities based on things such as race, class, gender, ability, and multiple other forms of oppression. We're all socialized by and live and work in systems and institutions that have deeply embedded oppression at their core. Some of us are marginalized by these systems, while others are privileged by them, which can make this work challenging, but is also why it's deeply necessary. Because whether we're conscious of it or not, all of these systems will show up in us. They'll show up in how we relate to each other, in who participates in our groups, in whose ideas we build projects around, how we make decisions together, and how we experience and behave during periods of conflict. A key practice of the transition movement is coming together in our communities to imagine new futures, sowing the seeds and creating the conditions for those new futures to come alive in the here and now. And at the same time, systems of oppression are setting limits and policing who does and doesn't belong, what is and isn't the right way to be or the right way to live. So without shining a light on inequities, we actually limit the potential and the potency of our visions for the future, what we can reimagine and how we rebuild our world together. When in our team, we set out on the path of exploring what a just transition might look like at a community level, it was clear that we couldn't just focus on delivering training, resources and events without ourselves inwardly looking at systems of oppression and power imbalances and how they will even exist in ourselves and also in us as a staff team, because that will affect then what we put out into the world. We want to ensure that we're integrating just transition principles into our work holistically, and that means exploring it from the inside out. So this isn't solely about how we might behave and act in ways that aren't oppressive. It's not just about saying the right words in the right places. This is much more deeply about how we can build more humanizing communities how we can practice limitless imagination in the ways that we might want our communities to look, to be fed, to have energy, to move around.
Okay, great. Hopefully that played okay for you. So as Yaz was saying just at the end there, again, kind of linking this idea of anti-oppression back to this kind of transition idea of imagination. And I think Yaz said something along the lines of behaving in oppressive systems and the way that they manifest in ourselves and in our teams, being a limit on the imagination. So I think that really, for me anyway, exemplifies this really important connection between the work of transition and the work of anti-oppression and bringing kind of justice and equity into the kind of core of the ways that we're being and existing together. Okay, so I think I'm almost at my time now, if I haven't already gone over it, but I just thought I would talk briefly around what we're going to be doing next. And this is obviously just from my perspective, there's much more activity that's going on in the UK, and I'm by no means speaking for all of the Transition Network in the UK when I'm sharing this. But in terms of what Transition Together is going to be up to, we're going to be continuing the kind of anti-oppression process that Yaz spoke about, that we've been doing with Held. So our hope is that kind of as that progresses and as we build those muscles within our team, there'll be impacts from that on our wider work and the work that we're doing with groups in the UK. And we're also just, actually by the time you're watching this, a few days ago, we will have launched a project called Cultivating Just Transition, which is with recipients of seed funding, which we have funding from the National Lottery, which is distributed to groups around the UK, and there's 60 groups who've received either full or partnership grants, and will be participating in a 6-month-long process of kind of learning about different aspects relating to just transition, and kind of exploring those on a kind of peer learning journey, and learning from each other and practices that they've found useful or not found useful in their contexts. So we'll be exploring aspects relating to accessibility, kind of global just transition and climate justice, working with trade unions, and kind of anti-oppression and power and privilege. So that will be hopefully an opportunity for groups to learn from the incredible work around just transition, which is already happening in countless groups around England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And yeah, there's loads of other stuff that I don't have time to go into, but hopefully that's been a bit of a useful whistle-stop tour of the work around just transition that we've been doing in Transition Together. And I'd really encourage you to watch that recording of the 4 groups who spoke around the work that they're doing, because that will be kind of much more on the ground, grassroots led just transition work than what I've shared today. But I hope that's been useful, and sorry that I wasn't there live. I'm looking forward to hearing how it went, and thank you for organising. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we'll just give a few seconds to let that settle before shifting gears. And yeah, I think we'll go to Virginia next, and then after that open up a longer space for comments and reflections and any questions if they're there. Okay, and I will introduce Virginia and then pass it over. Virginia Regner, is that the correct pronunciation of your surname? Yeah. Is an activist and community facilitator, passionate about the power of localization to build fairer transition processes for all people. She has a degree in social sciences and is studying a master's program in society and power from a gender perspective. She has founded the neighborhood organization Feria Vecinal Olivos to promote more inclusive economies. And I'll pass it over to you there to share, and yeah, we'll go from there.
I'm really happy to be here. it's great to see, and it gives me the opportunity to see that we have been working with this project for 2 years now. So when I sat down to prepare this conversation, I realized the amazing and incredible work that we have been doing in the neighborhood. It's so it was a gift for me. Thank you for this invitation. I have a few notes because I founded this project 2 years ago. It has all my heart. I put everything there. So when I talk about it, I can like be a mess because there is so much, so many things happening at the same time every time we do the festival that yeah, so it's kind of a living thing where there is a lot of order and a lot of chaos in the same time. So my conversation about it, it's coherent with that, you know, it's the same. So first, tell you that the Feria Vecinal Olivos is kind of a festival that we created 2 years ago. We are about 150 people now, all neighbors from the same place, and we self-organized to create it. Because the market, it's kind of a festival, a market, because you can see about in each festival, you can see about 50 entrepreneurs from the neighborhood, but also you can see artists. Also, you can see people painting murals and musicians and people planting native trees and children playing with rescued dogs. And yeah, so it's everything that's happening in the neighborhood has a place to be seen, has a place there to be seen. And it's an organization that's woman-led in a voluntary basis. And if you go to the festival that's held the first Saturday of each month, you will see that 90% of the musicians, entrepreneurs, and artists are women. And that's I think because we are the ones that don't have enough places to be seen, to be valued, to be recognized as leaders in the neighborhood too. So, and you can see that 10%, about 10% of the entrepreneurs are from one of the vulnerable parts of the neighborhood that it's called Bicha here. It's kind of a favela from Brazil. Maybe it's a definition that's known globally. So, and you can see that, I mean, about we have people aged from 17 to 85 years old, self-organizing to create this festival. So we do this, we use sociocracy principles. We gather in the park, we self-organize with the communication, the Instagram, the logistics, the municipal permits, and everything together. So this it is a really flat self-organizing group. And yeah, it's kind of a magic place. Some of us feel it as Island of Sanity, you know, the Margaret Willey concept of those places where you can just make a pause, connect, breathe, create or reveal what's there, and maybe you cannot see on the website of, or in the news, or in the media, and reconnect with yourself, with others, and with the land that sustain us. Maybe it's in the middle of the city. So I live in the city, it's my own neighborhood. And I know that when we live in cities, we usually forget that there is a land holding us, because we just can see like streets and buildings and, you know, and concrete, but there is a land holding us, and that's an opportunity to connect with that too. So the main purpose of the festival is to reveal what's alive, and reveal the new narratives that are being born while connecting, while being together, while working together as neighbors to do something that we really want to have in our neighborhoods. And it's strongly related to creating justice, because it's an opportunity to just see and value each other. I feel we cannot create justice if we don't believe that we are equals. Maybe we are not the same, but we are equally important. And that's we and the land that holds us. So I feel like if we can see each other as human beings, if we can connect to the place, if we can shift the way we observe each other, we can create more resilience, and we can. There is a quote I love. It says something like, you know, you're in a community when you see other people not as obstacles, but as sources of inspiration. So I truly believe that there is a lot of important work in creating global networks and creating national laws that can help us go through a more just transition to something that we don't know yet. But I also believe that we work as in different levels that are interconnected. So if we can do it in our neighborhood with the people that lives near us, maybe that's a glimpse, that's an opportunity, that's something that can show us if it's possible globally. So I always, when I created the festival, I was asking myself, what if I'm asking something from my government, from the market, from that I cannot do by myself? So that's, I need to try. We need to try to do it by ourselves. And then with that embodied experience, show that's possible. And it has been possible. It has been beautiful and weird and complicated at some, yeah, because collective work is not easy, it's rough. And the pandemic has made it more difficult. I know that. So we're more isolated. So in the cities, we are, maybe in other territories it's different, but the experience has been an experience of isolation and individualism. So being together and doing something together is rough. Doing something that is important for us, you know, is rough. So I want to show you, because I thought about doing a presentation, but I didn't want to do that. I can share screen. So is it okay if I can share the Instagram? So I talked to the group that is now working in communication, and I asked them, what should I share? Like, do you have any pictures you love? And they say, show our Instagram, is magnific. So okay, it's their work, I will show them. Yeah, of course, I didn't think about it. You put so much effort and I'm not showing it. Yeah, of course. So this has been created by neighbors to be working together. This is like the circle of communication, and they have been changing through those years. First, we have only one person, then 3, then 4, then they couldn't make the work, so they give it to the husband of one of the entrepreneurs, and then it changed to now that they are like 3 people. One of them is Sophie. She's 22 years old, and she's creating like incredible posts and videos. And so this is some of the moments we had last week. It's in the park, in the only park we have in the area. These are neighbors talking, sharing music, connecting, singing. They come as families. It's really beautiful because they're really magic connections, you know, people that realize they know each other from school when they were children, or yeah, so everything happens there. There's a video there about showing some of the tables, the vibe, and yeah, it's really tasty. It's really good. And so what I thought was, I need to make an invitation that is so sexy that nobody can say no. And a festival with food and music is impossible to say no. I mean, you have to be there. It's like near your home. There is food, there is everything. People is happy, and they are self-organizing. So everybody there wants to the festival to be incredible. We had yoga classes. We had a history gathering or a story harvest from the neighbors. We also did like a neighborhood map with the small businesses that were there. Yeah, it was, I mean, we have already painted in the park wall. We have already painted 20 murals, which is a lot. So that's the experience, and it has been magical, amazing, tough, and really small. Yeah. And like in summary, what we do is we work together, and that's resistance. We work together for our own neighborhood. We put our gifts for our own neighborhood. And we work with sociocracy, art of hosting, and nonviolent communication. So I have a lot of things to say, but I will stop there. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Yay. It looks so beautiful. I'm like, wow, I want to be in a community where that's happening. Like, that just looks so lovely. Thank you for sharing and for bringing this beautiful energy here. And yeah, it's nice for a small group so we can have some space for sharing and any reflections from Kit or Anahi or any follow-ups from you, Ver. We could just have some open space for the next 15 or 20 minutes. If anybody wants to share or ask any questions or share any of your own experiences from your community that work that you're doing. So I will open it up and welcome anybody who feels called to share.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yes, yes. I want to be there too. Such a lot of gorgeous ideas, and to see the pictures was helpful as well, just to get the image of what's going on there, the age ranges, the different socio-economic levels of people. I live in a suburb that's quite privileged, and we have a huge housing problem here. The young people are having to move away. They can't afford the rent. They can't actually afford the rent anywhere. So there's a lot of pressure taking up people's time. And yeah, the idea of something developing locally, people, yeah, I don't know how, but I think you've also given me the idea that, you know, just making the most of what we've got, because we do a number of things. I have a stall at a local farmers market. It's not a community market. It's a council organised market. We're the only not-for-profit stall there and the only environmental stall there. But we could make more of it, just from watching what you've shown us. You know, I think to put the microscope on what we're doing and build more around it is a message I'm taking away from what you've just shown. Thank you. That's my first contribution.
Thank you, Kit. Anahi, anything?
Yeah,
coming
can I
up
say
for you? Yeah.
Can I say something about it? Yeah. So we have this conversation all the time about the council wanting to be inside the market and make decisions, and that's really complex, I think, because that's the shift of narrative. If the purpose of the activity is just to create more money for a few, or if the purpose of the activity is to create more abundance for everybody. So money is one way of materializing abundance, but there are other ways. And yeah. And it gives, it comes with the conversation about what economy means in transition times. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to celebrate your passion, Virginia. I receive it, and that inspires me. And I can see all the energy and the creation that has born through you and with all your friends around. I really celebrate. Are you in Buenos Aires? Where are you? ¿Dónde estás?
Yes.
¿En Buenos Aires?
It's in Buenos Aires. Yeah.
Someday I hope I will go to visit. We are not so far. Yeah, I was once in Mendoza with the Caravan of Peace, and it was super beautiful to see the aliveness of the arts in Argentina. Somehow, my feeling in that moment was that in Chile, the dictatorships was too long, and a lot of the arts were just killed or left. But in Argentina, you have a way of transforming difficult situations in art. And I saw amazing stuff, like really good quality ways of saying this is not just, this is not right, this is not fair, but in a so beautiful way that I really would like you share that with the world. ¿Cómo se llaman las tunas? Can you share a
Las
little bit about the
dunas?
tunas? Tunas,
Dunas?
this group of people Tunas.
Latunas.
I think was that name. There is like 12 people dressed in some specific way, and they give kind of poems, but all is activism, like social critic, and they are strong enough to stand on front and say it. ¿Lo encontraste? ¿O no?
No, I don't know what it is.
No? I will search it, and if and I will
Yeah,
show if I
Latunas.
find.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
was
please.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, and I will look for that, and I come back.
Yeah. It talks about the diversity of art expressions in the country. I mean, Argentina, for me, I feel really, really lucky and honored to be from my country. And it's not just like nationalism. I really honor the work of the ones that came before. And the activism they put in the land. Yeah. So there is something interesting, if you want, I can share. So this park, when I moved to the neighborhood, this park we used for the festival was always empty, because it's a park where, for me, it's a transition park, because it's a place where you have a cemetery in one side, then you have a really rich neighborhood or part of the neighborhood in another. Then you have this house, I don't know the name, like the house for like old people, for like what's the name for,
Like
I
a
don't know.
nursing home?
Well, yeah, there's like a big nursing home. And on the other side, you have like a middle class neighborhood and then a really low class neighborhood. So it's everybody was like giving their back to the place. And apart from that, in 2008, there was a murder there. So that place was like entitled as a bad place. It's a bad park. You cannot be there because it's insecure. So the narrative for that place was awful, and nobody went there. So that was the place I choose for the festival. First, because it's easy to work in places that nobody wants. It's kind of, okay, nobody is going to do anything there. The government said like, yeah, do whatever you want. I mean, nobody wants that place, you know? And then, because for me, it's like, it's really powerful because it's in the center of the contradiction that it's in the world, you know, like different contexts all around. And nowadays it's a really populated place. I mean, every Saturday is full of people. I mean, and in the festival is full of people too. So it has changed the land, the narrative of the land for all of us. It was great to see the process.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love that center connecting so many different, and starting with the cemetery and the the wealthy. That's beautiful. Meeting place, the center, and also beautiful to hear you talk about the different currencies, like beyond financial currency, the social currency, and the connections and the well-being that comes from the connections. Yeah, I'm curious about if anybody has any noticings about the intersection between the three shares, from Abya Yala and Transition to what Rona shared about the context in the UK, to the festival that Ver shared about. I'm curious if anybody has any noticings or any through lines that they that jump out.
The festival and what we were just seeing, and the description of how you've organised it through sociocracy and nonviolent communication. I mean, they seem to me like manifestations of what the person on the film we just saw within the Rama film, I can't identify, the person who was talking about the inner transition. I mean, it sounds like what we saw with Via's film was a visual external form of the work that had been done about, you know, inner transformation. And so that it's good to sort of feel the inner moving into our, we need to go in and then we need to go out. Yeah.
Queridos, I need to go 2 minutes because my neighbor is asking me something and come back, okay?
I'm curious to know, Via, how you, when you were talking about the organising and the flatness and the processes you used, how did you manage, was that all done online or were they meetings in the park, or how did you get people together to?
Yeah, so we did, nothing was online because that would go against what we wanted to create. So everything was presencing, like going to the park or going to the houses. And it was really important to keep the organization only for neighbors from the same. So the idea was you can be part of this if you can go by walking or by bike to the park. If it's easy for you to get there, it's okay. If not, we can help you create your festival in your park. Because what happens, what I learned is that when you want to self-organize, but you are far from each other, it's difficult. You don't have time. You have more virtual time or no time at all. It's just business, you know? And for me, it was important to create space to share. So we have lunch together. We drink mate, you know, it's a kind of a tea. We have tea together and we have coffee, and because we live near from each other, so it's easy. And the thing is that it was not that important to organize. I mean, the most important thing was to be together, to share, to see each other as human beings. Then the organization goes like really easily. When we can connect, everything is solved because there are no many problems. Because really, we don't have to have really big organization skills to make something happen. That's what I learned. If you can just connect and have a few things solved, like the municipal permit, some small rules that everybody knows, and something else, and electricity, yeah, it's okay because we are connected. So when something is missing, someone is going to solve it. It's kind of, it's alive, you know? And if something is not good, nobody cares because, or maybe we care, but we don't judge. Do you just care and solve it, or care and, well, yeah, it was not perfect. This part wasn't perfect. It's okay. You know? But yeah, we live near each other. That's important.
Yeah, and coming back to your question, Dan, how to integrate also the 3 videos. Yeah, I feel there is a lot to do on that realm, like on bringing social justice. And as Kids was saying also when Jazz was speaking, one thing is to understand with our mind that it's important to distribute the power, that it's important to distribute resources. But the other thing is how all the old patterns act automatically, and we are not aware. And again, what Virginia was saying, like, we need the tools of nonviolent communication and how to give feedback and how to receive it and how to be aware to transform behaviors. And that is a mirror. And our Western civilization has not teach us like to be like seen in the not nice thing. We're teach like to hide the not beautiful things and just say the beautiful one. So it's a big transformation. I call it cultural transformation or a new humanity that is being born somehow. Like I think it's a generations of transformation. So yeah, I super appreciate all that you are bringing, and at the same time feel that we just need to keep going in little islands of health, moving forward, and it's a precious to have community because personally I have a global community, online community, but in my place, the worldview of beings is so different that it's not so easy to do. So it's a gift and it's a privilege, Virginia, that you have kind of same mind, same heart-minded beings, same-hearted beings around you. Because it's fundamental to watch the same, to share some kind of values and then focus on that direction. And I like so much when you were sharing about the map of that you create a map of kind of the initiatives of economic possibilities. So you create the circular economy there. And that is crucial with the inflation that you have in Argentina. That I admire, like the insecurity in that term is so big. I don't know how you do it. And everyone flows with it and flows because you organize. That was amazing. The people are organized. And I believe transition movement is people that organize themselves. It's amazing. So it's natural. Living in community is natural. The thing is that we have forgotten. So yeah, I super celebrate and I appreciate very much.
Yeah. Yeah, two things. I love the quote you shared about like being in communities when the other people aren't obstacles. Just like the hyper like individualism or being alone is the comfort zone and other people are, just annoying or whatever. It's such a like a potent reminder. Yeah, and also this hyper local and hearing you, Anahi, share about your community not having people that are of similar, values, and then even going like even more local, and you're doing work like on yourself, like so just seeing how on an individual level we can do the change and then on a community level and just seeing how that splinters out. It's also a good reminder. And I love that you framed the festival in that way, like seeing how yeah, doing something on this scale is possible, like a little like step in that direction. Seeing that is it's so important and hearing. So thank you so much for sharing this story. And it is inspiring and like kind of sad because I don't have that kind of immediate community like that. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
You just have to do something sexy and people will arrive. Yeah, because I didn't know people when I didn't I didn't know that they were there. I just called them and they came, and we share values and we don't share some of the values too. And it's the difficult but for me important things is to be together. It's just to be together, to value each other and be together. And if we don't share anything, we share the land, and that's enough. We share the land and we share that we want to live better.
That's so beautiful.
I wonder what time is in kids' place.
I need to go. Yes.
We're in
Huh?
Thank you. It's been great to be together. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for both of you for those wonderful contributions. I'd love to see the film again, if possible, Dan. The young woman in the UK and the film within that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll communicate with you about that. Yeah, it's been very expanding for my mind, just hearing and seeing what's been happening there.